Hi, Claudia here. This time I thought I'd go back to my comfort zone and do a watercolor painting. But first I need a sketch for that, and this video is going to be the sketch only. The actual coloring process will be in the next video, so stay tuned for that. As you can probably tell by the way I'm approaching my pencil drawing that I'm using a reference picture. However, I didn't want to just simply copy that reference image one by one. Instead, I said to myself, why not do more with this? I think it's generally a good idea to take a reference image and adapt it to your needs. Personally, I think references should help you realize your vision, not hinder you because you're trying to stick too closely to them. Unless you're doing studies, like learning anatomy, then that's a different story. So, I decided to go with the first idea that came to my mind, and that was ancient Greece. You know, classical Greece, inspired by statues and red and black figured pottery, etc., etc. You know what you usually see when people go for this theme. But then I started thinking, who am I? No, really. Who am I? I'm a person with a degree in archaeology, in pre- and early history and Near Eastern archaeology to be exact. I can be a bit more creative with this theme while still staying in Greece. So, back to the Bronze Age it is. And here comes my main inspiration for the overall styling I was going for. This is the catalogue to an exhibition centered around Mycenae from 2019, and I would have loved to give you a link to where you can buy it, but it seems to be out of print unfortunately. So, as you can see, the place and time I chose was late Bronze Age Greek mainland. You might also find that period under the name of late Helladic. For reference, because I'm just throwing names at you right now, that would roughly be between 1600 and 1050 BC, and more or less corresponds with late Minoan of Crete. But late Helladic and late Minoan are also often referred to as the Neo-Palatial period for the love of grand architecture. The most famous of them all is probably the Palace of Minos, also known as Knossos, on Crete. I'm sure you know of it. So, my main points of reference were those beautiful murals that have been found in places like Mycenae, Tiryns and Akrotiri. I know the majority of these frescoes are mostly reconstructions. Many of them only survived in small bits and pieces after the plaster fell off the walls and broke apart, which means there's already some degree of interpretation involved in the reconstruction. You'd be surprised how many archaeological artifacts, especially the famous ones, are at least in part, if not almost completely, reconstructed and not just restored. And I can't help myself and just have to show you some of the gorgeous jewelry of that period, which was crafted from gold, precious stones like carnelian, agate, amethyst and lapis lazuli, as well as faience and glass paste. Some of the materials had to be imported from as far away as modern-day Afghanistan, in the case of the lapis lazuli, for example. And here's a quick view at cute terracotta figurines. So let's put that away and let's talk a bit about the women of that time. Lucky for us, we do have textual evidence of the late Bronze Age Aegean. Clay tablets have been found with a script called Linear B, and the language that was written down is actually an older version of Greek. And that fact was the key to deciphering the tablets in the first place through Michael Ventris in the 1950s. There is, as you might have already guessed, also a Linear A script used on Crete that is still in the process of getting decoded and represents a pre-Greek language. Going back to the subject of my drawing, there's not that much known about the common woman, except that a large number of women worked in the palace in a variety of tasks. It is interesting to note that there seems to be more women than men in cultic functions, and you can observe a large number of women in depictions of rituals. Those ladies in the frescoes are most likely aristocratic women or priestesses, and their rich clothes that were made of luxurious fabrics and adorned with embroidery, as well as their fine jewelry, should not be viewed as the average attire of Mycenaean women. Unfortunately, we don't know much about how the people outside of the palace and outside of special occasions dressed themselves. We can safely assume that the everyday woman dressed more practical, and late Bronze Age texts do mention shorter, possibly pleated skirts and a short chiton, that is a cape-like garment, as everyday dress. How exactly these clothes looked like is mostly up to our imagination. It's a common problem in archaeology, as those people tend to be less frequently depicted and organic materials rarely survive over the centuries and millennia. In my drawing, I was trying to combine several aspects of women's clothing that show up all the time in frescoes. That means incorporating some of the more common patterns, like the stylized ivy on her shoulders, or trying to add spirals through her hairstyle. Lucky for me, in some pictures, the hair that's curled on the women's foreheads looks a bit like spirals, so I used that to my advantage. Because if there's one pattern that was immensely popular throughout the whole Aegean, it was spirals. You can find that motif on pretty much anything, but it was probably most used in pottery. I ditched the idea of also adding Rosetta-shaped beads on her headband or for one of her necklaces, because this painting was originally meant as a quick and simple project, and I didn't feel like losing myself in small detail. By the way, flowers, tree fruits and sea creatures seem to be popular designs for jewelry. And as for the hair is always depicted as pulled away from the face with hairbands, except for some strands in front of the ears and curls on the forehead. I can't tell if that hair was cut short for a fringe or if it's just curls arranged on the forehead and held in place by the headband. The main body of hair was usually styled in a combination of being pulled up into a half bun, bound together by more hairbands, or left hanging free. The hair was also quite often adorned with beads. Occasionally there's also a crown-like hat worn. It's likely that these women, and maybe even the men, who knows, used cosmetics made from minerals, that means black around the eyes to darken the lash line and red on the cheeks and lips. And that's already it for my short excursion to ancient Greece. I hope you enjoyed this and maybe even learned something new. The coloring process and how everything came together in the end will be in the next video, so I hope you'll be back for that. So, thanks for watching, and until next time. Bye!